welcome to Lead Live, reminding you of your personal genius and how you think in order to actualize what you desire.
Well, hello again for those of you who consistently leverage Lead Live. LEAD stands for Leadership Excellence and Achievement on Demand. And we are honored to have a remarkable guest today, very humble, accessible spirit who's a professional who's done a myriad of things during his time here on the planet. And all of these things really have been lessons learned for him, but also he's done things in ways that's contributed to the learning of others. So he's here because of his own personal manifestation of his genius. Now, I'm certain as I use some of this language, I may be embarrassing him, not intentionally, but I really want us to honor the fact that he chooses to lead in a way that has led to this topic that we have today. And the topic today is the key to professional happiness, problem solving. And we're going to be talking about his life for the most part and how he's done what he's done and how his behavior, his engagement, his acting, his pursuit of his interests has led him to a place where he's now where he is among the most happiest. But he had to problem solve along that way. And in fact, the problem solving got him to where he's at. So I'm going to share a little bit about his bio. And before I do that, I want to encourage you to feel free to join the conversation. If you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube, if you're on LinkedIn, regrettably, you can't add comments. But if you're on Facebook and LinkedIn, and of course, if you're watching by way of television, Roku TV, Amazon, we appreciate that you're here too. But otherwise, if you're on Facebook and LinkedIn, YouTube, feel free to share your comments, your questions, and we will acknowledge them during the broadcast. Likewise, we want to encourage that you be part of the broader community, our YouTube community. And we've been reminded to share that with folks. So we're intentionally doing that at the beginning and end of our broadcast now. So Jet's going to put in the comment section how you can sign up to our Lead Live YouTube account. And that's it for now in terms of any kind of commercial, because we are commercial free. So let's move back to the topic, the key to professional happiness, problem solving. So this gentleman I consider to be accessible, inspirational, clear, practical in his recommendations, and a humble leader. Literally, Philip Tran has a corporate career that spans 20 years at some of the most iconic Silicon Valley. And for those of you who are not in the US, that is a major space in the country that affects the rest of the world. That's where we think in terms of the old HP or Hewlett Packard, and we think of the current, whether it is YouTube or whether it's Google or it's Facebook or it's Apple. Literally, that's where a lot of activity occurs. And this gentleman, he worked for companies including Adobe, Lockheed Martin, one of my nephews and nieces that worked there, Hewlett Packard, Ducati, North America, and a number of startups. He's a founder also of a used car dealership, Mojo's Motors LLC. I love that title. And recently had a successful exit after co-creating a waste management company by the name of Terra Clean LLC. In 2018, Philip earned a fellowship in global studies at Stanford University, and in 2020 was awarded co-faculty of the year at Evergreen Valley College, which is how I came to know him through a connection, a lovely connection, a friend and colleague who just thinks the world of this remarkable man. Currently, Philip he became a full-time tenure track professor in business department at the College of San Mateo, and he lectures at a university in the Silicon Valley, Santa Clara University, university's MBA program in marketing department. He's also provided for a significant amount of time since 2015 strategy consulting services to his clients under KREATE 88, Create 88. So I want to ask this humble gentleman to come into the studio. Jet, would you bring him in? Thank you so much for joining us, Philip.
Hi, Dr. Webb. Thank you for inviting me.
It's an honor. Well, I have a lot of questions to ask you, but before I ask the questions and we engage in a discussion, I'd like for you to share something with the audience, the viewing audience, that they would otherwise not find if they looked up Philip Tran on the internet.
Sure. It's that I've gone through 6 different career changes, completely different careers, to land where I am now, which is as a business instructor at College of San Mateo.
That is a lot, but I want you to go a little bit deeper. What else is significant? Because someone may trace that and then they just heard your bio. What else is unique about you?
Well, what's unique, I would say, is that the fact that I was in ESL. So I was in English as a secondary language all the way till about 5th grade. And so, because I was not born here in the United States, I was an immigrant. In fact, we were boat people. If any of you remember that in the late 80s, people from Vietnam would try to escape Vietnam, and they would just basically go on boats and hoping that someone will pick them up. And my family was one of them. My parents tell me that we were 1 or 2 days away from all perishing, but we landed in the Philippines safely. And so then I immigrated over to the United States when I was 5 years old. My story as a Vietnamese immigrant is actually not unique. There's thousands of immigrants that went through this journey. Somehow, when I speak to other Vietnamese people, we're like, oh yeah, so which boat were you in? Oh, when did you arrive? And we just talk like it's very nonchalant, as if it's like, where'd you go for your prom? But when you speak to people who have never been through that experience, like, oh my gosh, you're on a boat, you're about to die, and it's just amazing how when you look back at your life, you normalize things that were, for some people, would be very traumatic. And I think in my mind, how I probably cope with it, how my family coped with it, was that we kind of normalized it.
And when you say normalized it, what do you mean by that?
Normalized mean, well, what you're going through, you kind of think of it as, it's just, well, doesn't everybody go through this? Doesn't everybody go through these type of struggles? And then, when we first came to America, it was 8 people in a 1-bedroom apartment. Well, isn't that normal to sleep with your parents and then your uncle and then your 2 cousins? It's fun. It's 8 of us. Isn't that normal? Don't every family live this way? And that's what I mean by normalize. And then only after you get a taste of what America can provide, you realize, whoa, there's a lot more out there.
And do you think that's part of the reason why you went from career to career to career? But really, you were almost in the same basic profession, if you will, but just in different organizations. Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, I was in pretty unrelated careers. So, for example, my first job out of college, I was a forensic toxicologist and a firearms examiner. Out of college, yes. Well, my degree, I kid around with my business students all the time. I said, look, anyone can be a business instructor. Look at me. I was a biology major and I'm teaching you business. So my degree was in physiology and my background was in business. My background was in the sciences. Up to the time I started my MBA, the only business class I've taken were economics in high school, micro and econ. I didn't know anything about business, really.
Interesting.
So after that, I transitioned over a career in IT, where I was an infrastructure engineer by title, but I wasn't doing much engineering, Dr. Webb. By title, I was an infrastructure engineer. And so that was completely unrelated to pipetting blood and urine for alcohol and blood samples, which was what I was doing at the crime lab in Santa Clara County. And after that, that's when I entered my first business job, which was accounting and finance at Lockheed Martin.
Interesting.
Completely unrelated. And going through my career, hopefully I'm not boring people to tears, but I ended up never being in sales before, and I ended up managing a sales team in the West Coast, East Coast, and in India. Never done sales before, and I was managing
Wow.
so these careers I
Wait,
had,
hold on a second. How did that happen?
being a couple things, being authentic and being able to sell yourself is what I say, and it's through a connection. So I was referred to by a coworker, and I joined a startup, and they saw that I had the acumen to sell, and they had the ability to communicate well, and had the ability to problem solve, and they gave me that position. With no experience in sales, informal sales at least.
Wow, because of your acumen. And what do you mean by acumen? Your ability to communicate and to connect with people? Can you be more specific?
Sure, I think
People tend to think of political acumen.
I'm thinking more, I guess my mindset is more business acumen. So
Wow.
business acumen as in what value providing to your prospect or your customer. How do you solve problems that customers have or prospects have? How do you articulate technical information to a non-technical audience? So the sales that I was doing was ERP sales, which is a fancy acronym for Enterprise Resource Planning.
Mhm.
The software you're selling is SAP, Oracle, PeopleSoft, very sophisticated, complex software. And so the ability to articulate technical information to a non-technical audience succinctly and cogently was a skill that I felt that I developed over time. But I think it was a God-given gift, that I was given, and I've leveraged that to the max, which is why I am a business instructor.
Wow. Wow. So you went from forensic, that's a whole industry in of itself, to ultimately sales, the forensic to IT, then to sales. Very curious. And when you think about those discrete and rather unique areas, even though the IT that you went into was complementary to the sales because it was around technology, software that one would use, right?
Mhm.
What did you find to be common as it relates to problem solving? Because you did something, I'm just going to foreshadow it, and we'll talk a little bit about it in a moment further. And that is, you gave a presentation to some members of my team. And it was just a very quick, I don't even know if it was 20 minutes, 15-minute presentation, and it blew them away. Your facility, your authenticity, as you said, your clarity and simplicity, you just broke things down. And I won't even tell people what it was about. We'll get to that in a second. But ultimately, they walked away like, oh, now I get it. It's not that big of a deal. So I don't know if you remember the original question, but I'll be quiet and let you answer it.
Well, I'd like to sneak in there too that I spent 7 years in corporate finance in between the IT career and then also the sales career as well too. So yeah, so a lot of different careers. I'm sorry, Dr. Webb, could you remind me the original question?
Well, let me just reframe it too, or rephrase it as well. What were the major learnings what were the takeaways from those discrete areas that may have been most complementary to your getting to where you're at right now?
Yes, it's always this idea of solving other people's problems, not solving your problems, because we all have our own problems, but people don't care about our problems. There's a saying that I think it was Lou Holtz, football coach, said that, or he may have not been the one that made this up, but he says, nobody cares about your problems, and the ones that do care about problems are glad that you have them.
That commentary, unfortunately, too real too often. Yes.
Yes. So I think it's this idea of looking to see how you can solve other people's problems. What can you do to, first of all, recognize and discover what their problems are, and then trying to see what you can do to help to solve them. And by that way, and do it in an authentic way, not in a, well, let me see if I can solve this problem and maybe I can get something back in return in some type of reciprocity. But it's genuinely trying to solve what problems that are really bothering them. And well, first of all, the first aspect is discovering it, because I think a lot of times we don't know what our problems are sometimes. And discovering the problems and solving it. And I think I've used that mindset throughout all of my throughout my entire career, from the crime lab to as a business instructor.
And any reasonable person who's been there, done quite a bit, understands that when you're focused on others, when you're supposed to be in service to others, and they experience that, and I want you to talk about what you mean, what I mean, they mean by experiencing from your lived experiences as a professional. When they experience it, all of a sudden the vistas open up. If they experience it, it's all about the self, that you're there to serve your own self, then everything closes. You're not successful. And the key thing about your trajectory, you were successful at all those levels. I'm sure you experienced some challenges, but it just catapulted you to the next thing, the next level, the next opportunity. So what is it that people need to experience when you're supposed to be in service to them? And we'll get around, folks, to the key questions that brought us here today.
It has to come from an authentic place. I think that's what it is. I mean, I think as human beings, we have this ability to sense fakeness. And I think we can't put our finger on it. It's just a feeling we have that I think is quite intuitive with humans, is that we're able to sense whether someone's been authentic or someone has a hidden motive. And the idea of trying to serve other people and trying to be helpful just to be helpful, I think goes a long ways. And I think that is really the key. It's not expecting anything in return. And don't get me wrong, there are times where I've been burned. Plenty of times I've been burned, but I don't let that discourage me. So I think that is what has helped me in my career, because in return, people have always helped me. And so that's why I was able to switch all these different careers, is because it's through people helping me and people believing in me and vouching for me, saying that, well, Phil has never done accounting before. He's got an IT background, but I know him and he can do this. He can do this corporate finance job. So that has served me well.
It's awesome. So I want to ask you, why did you choose to become a professor, a college professor?
Sure. Well, that's a pretty loaded question, but succinctly, I would say it's because there's a reason why I switched careers so much. And I worked for 11 companies. There was a lot of other companies there that you didn't even mention, Dr.
That's
Webb,
correct.
because I worked for 11 companies, and we don't want to rattle off all those companies. The reason why I switched careers and companies so much was because I was disenchanted with corporate. It was like a love-hate relationship, because from someone with very little means, and we were on welfare at one point when I was growing up, my family and I. Corporate provided a lifestyle and provided a living for us, but at the same time, I had these mixed feelings about corporate, because I just felt that it was sucking my soul. And I'm not trying to disparage corporate for other people, because a lot of people love my friends. I tell my friends all the time, I tell them, I wish I could be like you. I wish I could enjoy coming to work every day and looking at these spreadsheets and see how much money I can save Adobe, or how much money I can save Lockheed Martin. But that wasn't my mindset. I had this feeling of wanting to serve, but I didn't know how to use that motivation in a career that would also provide a livelihood as well too, especially coming from a background where I was where there's a lot of resource insecurities. And when I say resource insecurities, I don't mean just financial resources. I'm talking about time as well too, because my parents, they worked 2 jobs up to in their 50s. So forget not having enough money, but just not having enough time, not having enough food. The only resources that were plentiful was love in the house and hope for the future, but everything else was pretty scarce. And so the idea of leaving a comfortable corporate job was hard for me to reconcile based on my history and where I came from. But I knew something was not fulfilling about corporate, and that's why I got into teaching.
Wow. Well, that's significant. And when I think about what I've heard about you and your actual legacy, that not only do students adore you, because of just your personality, your character, yet they find you invaluable. You have actually prompted them to go deeper in reflecting on their own lives and their capacity in professional pursuits, whereas otherwise, if they had not had contact with you, they might not have done that. And that's the power of a facilitator of learning. Whether you are a professor in a profession as a college or university instructor or professor, or whether you are a business owner and you're leading your team, or whether you are someone who's trying to help a community transform, the degree to which you can facilitate understanding, especially of self and use of resources to enhance the self in service. Oh my goodness, that's powerful. And that's the way you've been described. And again, it's not about making you embarrassed. It's just about telling the facts, because I think you're sufficiently humble. You may not share some of these details. Let me ask you the next question. Now, you've already indicated that your career path was not linear. You did everything from IT, corporate finance, sales, and entrepreneurship, which we haven't even talked about yet. You're owning your own business and then co-owning another business and ensuring the viability of those institutions. What advice would you give someone who is disenchanted with their current job and searching for a more satisfying career?
Well, I think it's been romanticized quite often that people should follow their career, their dreams, and I think in some ways, yes, and I did follow my dreams, and my dreams was to service my community in a way that also provides a living for myself as well. However, I felt that I didn't, at least from my situation, I did not have that luxury of going for or trying to achieve my dreams when I came, based on the history that I came from, and how I grew up in terms of how we were, very resource insecure. So I think that if anyone is disenchanted with their careers, first of all, be brave and be open to trying different careers. And it's not a one-way door. Just because you leave a career doesn't mean you can't go back to the previous career, especially if you left a good impression. So it's not as scary as you may think. And after you've done it once, you do it twice, you do it three times, you change careers 2 or 3 times. Like, wait a minute, I've done this before. It turned out okay. It wasn't so bad. So that's the first advice I would give: is be open to changing careers. The second advice I would give as well too would be, in following your dreams, it's like Maslow hierarchy of needs. If anyone says open up a psychology book, or anyone has read a business book, they'll talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the base is going to be your basic needs, and that's food, shelter. It's hard to think about self-actualization, which is the peak of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when you don't know where your next meal is. And so, that's why I worked in corporate for 20 years, is because I felt that I needed to build my needs. I need to have my needs met: food, shelter, financial security. Only then did I feel like I could try to fulfill self-actualization. And it's not an abrupt change. You don't have to go from making 6-figure plus salary to all of a sudden, live like a simpleton and then and pursue your career. You can do this at the same time. When I had my businesses, I had my corporate job because I like my 3 weeks of PTO. I like my paid vacations. I like my paid sick days. I like all the benefits that corporate provided. But I also wanted to fulfill my dreams of owning a business and doing something that's more impactful than what I was doing 9 to 5. So you can do this at this. The only problem is you're not going to probably have a life. But I feel that it wasn't that bad because you're doing something you enjoyed anyway. So my advice there would be to consider keeping your day job and then dabble in what is it that satisfies you.
Well, it's interesting because you said several things as you were conveying. You said be open And what came to mind right away is what we're all about here at Lead Live is mindset. The degree to which you have a growth mindset, the possibilities become endless, literally, not figuratively. And the notion of pursuing your passion, which you kind of interrupted a little bit when you said that, you hear it a lot. It's powerful, and arguably that's what you've done. You've chosen, right? No one said you must do this, and even if they did, your wiring is not to do what you must do. You do what you did what you wanted to do. And so you obviously had a growth mindset because you didn't do the classic trajectory. Go to college, get a job, stay there for whatever number of years, stay in the same industry until you retire, if you retire, and then that's it. You became an entrepreneur. You did more than that. You built a business. You did more than that. You decided to say, okay, let me just do a win-win and exit that business. You chose. So the power of mindset is invaluable. Can you speak a little bit to that? Because we can talk about a lot of things that's embedded in problem solving. When you have the right mindset, all of a sudden problem solving becomes a gift, right?
Absolutely right, Dr. Webb. And there's a saying that if you think you can, you're right, and if you think you can't, you're also right. And so it's so easy to say, well, change your mindset, be more confident, have a growth mindset. I think it sounds very easy, but how do you do it? So what I try to tell my students, and this is something I practice, and that's what I do. I just whatever I speak about in my classroom, I tell them from personal anecdotes, because this is what I do this is what I practice. And one of the things I do, because look, we've all been in situations where we haven't been confident at times. And so changing that mindset, so much of it, the core of it, so much of it, it's grounded by confidence. And so how do you build that confidence? I talked about how when I changed careers, every time I changed my careers, I became more and more confident in doing this because of the successes I've had. So how do you build on that confidence? How do you even start having confidence? How I do it is I tell students it's the opposite of what you ever heard of the Air Force, their slogan, their mantra is aim high. Well, I tell people, well, aim low. And that's how I build confidence. So for example, during COVID, shelter in place, like most people, I started getting out of shape. I started getting the COVID bod. And I was thinking, and what do most people do? You know what? I'm going to run 15 miles tomorrow, and I'm going to do 100 push-ups. That's a great way for you to get discouraged.
Exactly.
And so what I do is I aim low. I said, you know what? I'm going to do 100 push-ups, but you know what? I'm going to do 100 push-ups in 10 days. Today, I'm just going to do 10 for the day, not in sequence, but for the day. And if it's not 10, maybe 2. If it's not 2, maybe 1. Start with that. And so you build that confidence to follow through on what you said. I said I'm going to do 1 push-up today, and I'm going to do that one push-up today. And you know what? Tomorrow, double that. And what does that get you to? 2 push-ups. But now you're building momentum, and you could be at 2 push-ups for the next week. I don't care. It's not a sprint; it's a marathon. And you'd be surprised how those little incremental improvements really helped you. And so when you talk about mindset, Dr. Webb, for me, I feel so much of it is the core of it. It's really building up that confidence. And that confidence you look for that confidence anywhere you can. It could be, okay, I'm flunking all my classes, but I got an A on this one paper. Or, you know what, things aren't going well right now, but you know what, I did 100 push-ups today, and I told myself I was going to do 100 push-ups in a month, and I was able to do it. You find it anywhere you can, any way you can.
I want to remind people of something, and for those who don't know, expose you for the first time. This is just one perspective, but we've shared Robert Kiyosaki's view of the nature of where we can choose to land. And again, it's about choice. On the front end, for a lot of us, we believe it's the only option we have. But even as we leverage that option, it's still a choice. So we can choose to be an employee and or an entrepreneur, and or a business owner, or we can be an employee and have investments, or we can choose to be in one or more of the point. We can be in one or more of those quadrants. And depending upon where we're at, we actually have greater levels of freedom to make decisions, or so we believe. And that confidence that we have that led us to being an entrepreneur, that led us to actually building out a business of our own, that led us to invest. In addition, that initial confidence that led us to secure that job if we've chosen to do so, because some people never had a job. I know folks who are doing extremely well, never worked for anyone else. They've always worked for self. So we're not saying that working for self is the only way, working for others is the only way. Choose what works for you that's going to get you to the end that you want to achieve. And so that's the next thing I want to ask. How did you come to a place where you even knew what you wanted?
Well, actually, I think my coworkers, my peers, taught me this lesson, and they were the most disgruntled workers I worked with. They're the one that taught me this lesson, and how they taught me this lesson was very indirect. And I worked in places, these large corporations, where you see people maybe even more disgruntled than me, telling me, just coming to work with a bad attitude. And then I asked, wow, I'm sorry to hear all these problems at work. How long have you been here? 20 miserable years. I'm like, 20 miserable years? Oh, at what point did you decide to do something about it? Or just going to keep complaining for another 10, 15 years? And I realized, wait a minute, if I'm not happy, I'm going to be having the same conversation with a new employee. And that's the lesson that they taught me, was that if you're unhappy, and they never sat me down and said, Phil, if you're unhappy, you should get out of here. No, they just like everything else, they taught me through example. And they taught me that if I don't want to be like them, then don't follow their path. And that's why I had that mindset of switching careers, doing something different, creating my own businesses, because if I'm not happy where I'm at, I'm going to do something about it.
And so that gets us to the happiness part of you. You create it in order to experience what works for you. And when you experience what worked for you, you experience happiness.
Yes.
Was that problem-solving process methodical, meaning that you had a stepwise approach, or was it kind of more organic? It just evolved based upon your experiences?
Yeah, I can't say that I follow some type of formula, or I brainstormed it. It was more of just asking myself, well, if this is not going to be happy, if this is not going to make me happy, then what will? And just kind of just pulled on that thread to see where it was going to lead, and being open to trying new endeavors and trying new things that I'm just not comfortable with. So I can't say that it was formulaic in that way, in which I came up with the idea and I did a visiograph on it. It's just what made sense. And I'll give you an example. I had a peer called me from a different college on Friday, and she asked me for a career advice. And her question was, and she's also a business instructor and someone who I respect very much. And she asked me, Phil, I have these two opportunities and I don't know what to do. And I says, look, I know you well enough. You're an entrepreneur instructor and you're an entrepreneur yourself. You don't need to hear what I have to say. What does your heart tell you? And she says, you know what? And I just and I think I just told her what she needed to hear. And I think what she was expecting was, you should go for opportunity A because it's better than opportunity B for these reasons. But I did not give her that advice because, well, first of all, I don't know, right? But I can tell you who would know, and who would know would be her heart. Her heart would know. Her intuition would know what is the right move. And so in terms of problem solving in that way, when I say it's not formulaic or there's no strategy behind it, it's just like, what felt right? Did it feel right for me to stay at this company? Did it feel right for me to go to another company? Does it feel right for me to start this business? And I don't know if you're a fan of Malcolm Gladwell and his work, in his Blink. And it's that, you know what, whatever on that multiple choice, Tess, the first question is the right answer. Don't overthink it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I want to follow up, and well, I'll follow up later. Let's ask this question. What was your sales approach in your prior businesses?
Yes, so it's really this idea of problem solving. Well, first of all, it's the first step was really uncovering what is the needs of the prospect and really trying to solve their problems. And that's how I approach sales, even as a car dealer. And we all know the perception of a used car dealer, someone who's sleazy, manipulative, you know. But that wasn't my approach. And because I have my own car dealership, I didn't have a big name brand to back me up like AutoNation or DGDG. They're just basically buying it from literally a guy, and I was that guy. So I was at a severe disadvantage in my car dealership, in that business. But in approaching the prospects, I was trying to see what problem I'm trying to solve for them. If there's a family of 8 people coming to my dealership looking for a vehicle, and all I have are Miatas and 2-seaters and coupes, I'm not solving their problems. I'm not going to sell them a car. I'm not going to try to sell them a car. But what I will do is ask them, well, if you're looking for a minivan, I can help you. I can direct you to some dealers that do have minivans, if that's what you're looking for, SUVs, because I don't have any in the lot. It's trying to solve what problem that they're having. Same thing with my when I had my web development agency with my 2 other co-founders. So the 3 of us, we would build websites for these small businesses, but at the same time, we would also provide small business consulting as well too. Again, solving problems for the other person and bringing value to them. And that's always been my approach in sales. It's discovering the problems and then trying to meet those problems. And if it would be lovely if you had the solution to their problems, but sometimes you don't. And sometimes you don't. And I think the right thing to do is to tell them that you don't, and maybe refer them to someone else who does.
Well, when I thought of you in preparation for this broadcast, this image came to mind because this is essentially what you're talking about, that evidence the nature of who you are in leading, whether it's in support of an employer or it's your own business, or it's certainly in the role of facilitating learning among adults who's looking to move into one or more careers. And that is the importance of authenticity or sincerity. And you're right. Intuitively, we know when people are coming with fill in the blank or coming with honesty and integrity that's embedded in this authenticity, reliability, commitment, integrity, competence, consistency. Ultimately, you're engendering trust, right? In your respective roles. And the degree to which we do this as professionals, oh my goodness, people do what they've done for you. So, we know that you don't have a particular background in there, but you will just rise to the occasion. You'll shine. You will exceed the expectations. And you did. And you move on, and you did again, and you did again. Those core areas were critical. Do you want to add anything to that as I move to the next question? Because I have a lot of questions for you.
Sure. Yes. I'd like to see that infographic again, and I like to highlight one aspect of the infographic. I mean, you look at these 4 or 6, areas, and they seem pretty obvious, but there's one area I think that people do not. I think one area I think that should be highlighted would be consistency. And you're probably thinking, well, consistency really matters. And I'm a golfer, so I'll use a golf metaphor. Look, anyone can get a birdie, but can you get a birdie 18 holes? So if you're looking to be authentic, that consistency really matters. And so much of that is related to, I think, you're just being disciplined. So having that consistency where you say something and you follow through on it on a regular basis, I think really goes a long ways in building a good reputation and having an authentic personality.
Awesome. Could you define happiness for us in your own way? Because our topic is the key to professional happiness is problem solving. And we're going to come closer to that in answering or providing more details about that particular topic. But could you define professional happiness from your
Yes. are you happy to wake up in the morning? And that's what I ask myself. Am I happy to wake up in the morning? Or am I just dreading getting out of bed? And I wish I can give a more academic definition, but
I don't think our audience cares about academic
yeah.
response. They care about clear, practical response. Yes,
Yes.
honest response. Mhm.
So if you wake up in the morning and if you're jumping out of bed, then you are a very happy person. But if you're waking up and you're hitting the snooze button 4 or 5 times, maybe you're not too excited about that job or career. And that's when I knew that I fell in love with this profession, was that I am happy. I look forward to doing the work I do. When it's summer break, I feel low. I can't wait to be back in the classroom. I'm like, what is wrong with me? I know it's only been 3 years of me teaching. Maybe it's just a honeymoon phase, but I hope that it never goes away. So that's how I define my happiness, is that, are you excited to wake up in the morning doing what you do?
So really, happiness for you is all internal. That's powerful.
Absolutely, because you can't control the external. You can't control what people say to you. You can't control what your boss tells you. You can't control what your spouse tells you, or what mood he or her are in that day. But you can't control how you react to it. So absolutely, happiness is internal.
Well, it's so interesting. As you know, I had this visual problem solving. Where on the left side of that visual, or this visual, you see a lot of activity. And if you could see it, it's a little bit too small. But there's, groups of people thinking and coming up with clarifying the problems. Groups of people who are taking that and breaking it down in terms of why it's a problem to begin with. And then there's different tasks and different visuals to reveal the process. There's all this activity going on outside of that illumination. And then to the right, you see things in order. They're aligned. And so when I think about part of your background, and my apologies for making it so simplistic, I think about you finding your way from that child who came here, and parents who were unwavering in taking care of your family, and then the network as it grew, and then you seeing possibilities, and it was all over the place. And then ultimately you come to a place where you're still in that mode of receiving, without a doubt, because you're open, you've got a growth mindset, and that's your predisposition of your heart. And yet you now are in more alignment with what is a perfect illumination of you than you were initially. And it's okay to have all that stuff. But it's very important to align what's necessary, and to be open to aligning what's necessary to get to that space of happiness. And happiness is not static, right? You've got to work to maintain it.
Yes, and I love this infographic, or that image there, is because I think in terms of problem solving, and I wish I could tell you that I knew right away that the reason why I was unhappy was because of my job or my career, and it wasn't that simple. I think one of the keys to problem solving is being able to see through the noise and distilling the essence, this first principle thinking mindset of seeing through the noise, distilling the essence, the root cause analysis of what's going on. Because because I was unhappy in the careers I've had, but it was also affecting my personal life too. So I didn't know what the variable was, to be quite honest with you, for many years. Is it my relationships? Is it where I live? Is it is it me? Is it internal? Like, what was going on? And then through through a series of problem solving and clearing through the noise and figuring, and then I was like, wait a minute, there's one commonality here, and a lot of it's because Monday through Fridays I don't like waking up, and on Saturdays, Sundays I still didn't like waking up because I knew that Monday was around the corner. And I realized, yes, and that's when I knew it was a big problem, was because I wasn't even looking forward to Fridays, because I knew that Monday was just 3 days away. I'm like, and so that's like, okay, I need to do something here. I need to change, and I can't just keep switching careers. I can't join a 12th company, because there is one commonality here in all of this, and that's me. So with problem solving, I think it's really distilling the essence of what is going on. What is the ultimate problem here? And when you brought up that cash flow quadrant from Robert
Robert.
Kiyosaki, yeah, when you look at the cash flow quadrant, if you don't mind, I'll loop it back into financial security. You wonder what is the commonality of all the troubles and all the stresses that's in your life. You wonder, well, if I had money, would I still need to work at this job? If I had the financial resources, would I miss out on the time with my children? And then if you look at the root cause analysis there, and you're like, wait a minute, if I had financial resources, I think a lot of my problems would be solved. Not all my problems. And I tell people, I tell my students in my business class is that money will not solve all your problems, but it will. But having a lot of money will solve all of your money problems.
You got it. And here we emphasize the wealth equation. And for us, the wealth equation are literally, and you know this, faith, family, finance, fitness, and fun. And this is so critical to us. We believe that everyone really has the opportunity, even where they're at, even the most challenging circumstances, or quite frankly, the most idyllic circumstances, they can pursue and actualize financial independence. The question is, what does that independence number mean to you? It's different for everybody, and no one needs to have the same as someone else. And that's the power of you, Philip. You have an internal, beyond clock, but really, what do you call it? A compass that guides you. And as a result, you're able to go back there. Now, it took you a while to be able to distill what the real central issue was. And it was never outside of you. It was always within you, right? On the surface, it's a corporation. On the surface, it's a location. On the surface, it's a relationship. In reality, it always begins and ends with self. And the degree to which we can slow down and do that problem solving, which you talked about critically, thinking about, imagining possibilities, and actually beginning to distill how to break it down. And it doesn't have to take years. And it's amazing. I remember talking to someone who was clear she was going to have to spend the next 3 years. This is finance related, but could be any area, could be relationship, could be purchasing a home, that she was certain that for the next 3 years, she was literally not going to have enough money to pay off her debt. And so because she had that mindset, like you said earlier, you're on it. Whatever your beliefs are, they're accurate. When you shift your beliefs, you change them, those new ones are accurate because you're going to mobilize and ensure the universe gives you exactly what you asked for, even if you don't want it. So she was clear that 3 years would take her to eliminate all of her debt. And she was going to pay someone a really handsome fee to help her do that. And she bought into, this is what I need. And I listened to her. I said, well, have you thought about just doing that yourself? Well, I don't have the expertise. I said, well, what expertise do you think you need? Well, this person has it and this company has it. I said, very good. I said, I acknowledge that. But let me also say to you, they're going to ask you to do these steps. And she goes, really? I said, yes, you can call them and ask them. Find out. And guess what? If you do those steps yourself, you'll have the answers that they're going to provide you. Really? I said, sure enough. I said, take care of those steps. Over a month and a half, she engaged. It was a lot of due diligence. We had a follow-up call and she was like, oh my gosh, I can pay off my debt by February. The power is getting the right information, right, Philip? And then taking the time that's necessary to do the due diligence, and you may find the solution is within reach and you don't have to pay somebody else for it. You can get it, but you have to pay yourself that time to reflect and do the due diligence. We're so busy rushing, we're not slowing down to critically assess things, to imagine possibilities. Growth mindset, folks, to then be able to break it down and problem solve. And there's so many benefits. And maybe I can have you back on another broadcast because I came up with 20 benefits alone for just problem solving. That's a whole session, and would love to have you come back for that. But let's go on to the next question. We're near the end, folks, so we appreciate your engagement. It seems that professional happiness It's what you want for your students, diverse adults to experience. Uh, is it true, and why? And how do you contribute in that space?
Well, how do I contribute? It's to be the best instructor I possibly can by bringing the most value to my students every single day, treating them like their customers because, quite frankly, they are. It's bringing this mindset of sales and delighting your customers and under promising and over delivering. And that's what I bring to the classroom, or at least I attempt to bring to the classroom. I know that all sounds like a sales pitch and it sounds like something I wrote up, but I literally just made up just now because that's how I feel 100%. And I can go through some of the things I've done to back up what I said, but ultimately, every day in the classroom, I'm looking to provide value. And I think of it because of my background in sales. Clients, when they sign contracts, but there are always clauses contractually where they can rip up the contract and you've just lost a major, or you could have lost a client. I wonder if every instructor could feel, if they felt that if their students could fire them at any day, I wonder if their teaching, how their approach to teaching, would it be different? Or are they just pretty comfortable in their tenured position and they're just, if you could excuse me, fat, dumb, and happy, I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing, and that's not that's not how I approach teaching. And so I approach teaching by providing value every single day, not letting up, and feeling that at any time I can, these customers that I'm pontificating to could fire me. And I don't say that in a paranoid way. I say that in a way to put pressure on myself to not let up. And we talked about consistency. It's easy. It's like, you know what, I'm going to take a day off. They're watching, they're going to watch a video today because I just don't feel it. You know what? Be consistent in your approach. When you are trying to build, a personal brand for yourself, and you're trying to build, your name recognition, is having that consistency. So I bring that to the classroom. I try to at least every day, or at least I attempt to.
You used the word customer before I asked the last question.
Yeah.
What do you mean by customer? Because people hear that, and depending upon their space, where they originate, where they're in, it's considered to be a valuable term. It's considered to be an even a less than valuable term. What do you mean by customer?
For me, a customer is someone who's well, I guess a customer is someone that you need in order for you to have a business. How about that? I'll frame it that way, without money or anything. But if you don't have customers, you don't have a business. And so by acknowledging that you don't have a business without these people or groups of people, how will you treat them differently? Will you take them for granted, or will you cherish your opportunity with them? You cherish your relationship with them.
Love it. Love it. The importance of you having a sense of purpose, you making certain that you add value. You want them to experience the value. It's not intellectual. It is definitely feeling. And you brought in the importance of the heart. And we talk about heart-mind integration, not just connection, and the power of understanding that we're driven most of the day, every day, by our heart, and most of us think we're driven by our mind. We write things down, we're going to accomplish it. Unless we feel it, unless there's an emotional commitment, doesn't matter. We're not likely to achieve it, folks. And some of you are thinking, oh, wow, is that the missing ingredient? Wow, because every day I write this long list and I only get to one thing or two things. You have to have a burning desire for whatever it is that you're doing. And what Philip is doing is demonstrating his burning desire for where he's chosen to land. And that's powerful. We all get to benefit from doing just that if we so choose. And we just encourage you to find that burning desire. It may not be so easy. It may actually be elusive for a while, but allow yourself to go there, find it. So If you were to describe key benefits of professional happiness, what would they be? Or what are they from your perspective, Philip?
It's succinctly, it's going back to professional happiness, which is I wake up every day and I'm excited, and you are in the in the education industry. When you're in the education industry, there are no Mondays through Fridays. You're replying back to students. You're putting out fires even on weekends, and I love what I do. So I wake up and I wake up every day and I enjoy it. I enjoy tackling whatever problems may arise, or imparting some type of knowledge or story onto people who have less experience than I have. Um, and I think that's how I define my happiness. Um, and
Mm.
that's what makes me feel so happy now and so fulfilled than when I was in my previous careers.
Hmm. So, what comes to mind when you were answering that question was the power of your well being, how you feel.
Yeah.
Uh, physically, how you feel emotionally, how you feel spiritually, how you are just motivated to create and to constantly create in terms of the curriculum, create in terms of the practical application, whatever you have your students engage in terms of assignments. You're actively engaged in creating because you're happy, you're motivated, you're inspired, and it pays itself forward. So you then motivate, inspire, as I know, many others, including colleagues. So as we close this out, I would like for you to share any closing comments you have. And we just touched the surface, folks, in terms of the nature of pursuing a profession, living in a space where you're doing what you enjoy. And that happiness is a result of your effective problem solving. And I don't mean effective meaning there's one formula. And I appreciate you, Philip, by saying, who are you to suggest that you got the right formula? There are probably as many formulas as there are billions of people on this planet. The question is, how much are you choosing to invest in you to find the formula that works for you?
Yeah.
Want to summarize for you?
Yes, I would like to inject a little bit of entrepreneurial mindset here. Is that uh, people could look at my career as failures, as a series of failures. I kept switching careers. Oh, you failed there, or oh, it didn't work out for you. Failure is part of the process, folks. That's what I just started. I started learning that was that failure is part of the process. So don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there and fail and learn from that.
Yeah, that's powerful. I want to put this last visual up here. There's so many ways to solve problems, but you have to begin with why is it even important to address that problem? There's some problems that are not even significant. We just need to leave them alone and walk away, right, Philip?
Oh
They're,
yes,
it's not relevant. But there's some that are critical to our well-being, to our sense of confidence, our effectiveness, our overall success. So we need to assess the situation, know what options are available to us. And we don't have to know initially, but if we do like Philip has done, leverage people who've experienced, who understand, and then we learn from that, then we see real options. And then we get to choose, and then we have to act, and then we get to assess how well we're moving forward. There's so many different ways to look at this process, and there may be a process that's only 2 steps or 3 steps. Be less concerned about the steps and more concerned about being clear about, if you have a problem, is it important to even address? And if it is, take the time to do it. You deserve it, to honor you. The other thing is we just want to indicate the power of creativity. And I want to show you something that really gets back to what Philip and I have been talking about. And that is, and he just mentioned the notion of failure. It's an opportunity to grow, right, Philip? That's what you just said.
absolutely.
Whereas if you have a fixed mindset, you just believe that it's the limits of your ability. Growth mindsets, challenges help you grow. And a fixed mindset, challenges reflect that I shouldn't be here. I'm not worthy, or something is wrong with me. The powerful thing about growth mindset is to recognize that as humans, the whole point of life is to grow, my humble perspective, and grow in a way where we get closer to the nature of who we are, which I believe at our core, at our deepest core, is unconditional love. And so some people, like Maya Angelou said, the whole point of life is to love unconditionally. So whatever you believe is the purpose of your life, honor that and go deeper. Make certain it is worthy of you. It honors you. And Philip, it's an honor. I appreciate you and look forward to continue to building a relationship with you. You're a remarkable professional. You're a genuinely sound leader who demonstrates the power of what it means to transform, to move from one paradigm to another, to choose to shift in a way that honors your best well-being.
Thank you, Dr. Webb. I appreciate you inviting me on the show.
It's an honor. And I think we have a couple of comments we want to honor. So thank you so much, Dr. Webb and Professor Philip Tran, for hosting this amazing and helpful virtual event. I really appreciate it. Well, we appreciate you being here. Absolutely. And Sagan says, yes, thank you both for giving such amazing, valuable advice. Literally, it is our honor. And I know you two are doing remarkable work and expect you to continue to show up in a way that shows out and reminds other people that they can show up and show out so that they experience more of the happiness that really is part of our birthright.
Yeah, we all deserve to be happy.
Wado, folks. Please, thank you for providing your comments and your questions now and the future. And definitely click to like on Facebook and definitely sign up with YouTube so that you can get early notification of these videos. We honor you and expect to be of service and in service to you. Wado.